Welcome back to the Morning Kickoff Show. I'm your host, Matt Witt, and we are here to talk Minnesota Vikings football. The Minnesota Vikings have fallen 34-23 to the Detroit Lions in yet another defensive collapse. This Minnesota Vikings team has allowed over 400 yards in 5 straight games, which is the most in franchise history. A lot needs to change defensively for this Minnesota Vikings team going forward, and it all starts with defensive coordinator Ed Donatel. The Minnesota Vikings defensive coordinator had this to say after the disgusting defensive performance.
Why have you gone 9-2 when the defense is 31st?
Good question. In today's world, there's so many ways to measure things, and yards never won or lost a game.
Ed has a lot to prove for the Minnesota Vikings the remainder of this season, as there is no excuse to continue to allow 24 points per game when you have this many talented players on defense. And looking on the offensive side of the ball, it wasn't pretty either. Now, statistically, looking at a lot of it for this Minnesota Vikings team, it looks good, but at the end of the day, they were trailing the whole game. Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison were not able to go in the run game, and Kirk Cousins had no time inside the pocket. And this is where it all starts by looking back at this offensive line and how we run offense here in 2022. Looking at it for the Minnesota Vikings offensive line, I'm not going to give them I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt here. I mean, you're starting two of your starting offensive linemen are out in this game. Christian Darrisaw, maybe your best offensive lineman, is still out with a concussion. And in addition to this, Garrett Bradbury joined the injury report, and we saw Schlottman come out there, where Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison combined for 22 yards on 17 carries, averaging less than 2 yards per carry. Dalvin Cook had that disgusting fumble. They weren't able to convert on 4th and 1 in the first quarter of this game. In addition to this, Kirk Cousins was sacked 4 times. I mean, I can't wrap my head around the fact that the Minnesota Vikings still have not come to the realization that Kirk Cousins needs time inside the pocket. Now, you're going up against a pass rushing team where you're going Aiden Hutchinson, great player. There's multiple players. But the problem, I'm not coming here and I'm not going to point my finger at a specific offensive lineman and say that he's the fault. I'm looking at the fact that we are not adding additional blockers. I'm looking at the fact that Dalvin Cook and this backfield is not picking up the blitz. The Detroit Lions had an agenda in this game. They knew getting to Kirk Cousins is how you can contain this Minnesota Vikings offense. And their defensive front did a great job making us a one-dimensional offense where the Vikings were not able to move the ball on the ground. For that reason, they were able to get to the quarterback as they knew we had to pass to catch up. And with that being said, the Vikings tight ends and running backs did not pick up the blitz. TJ Hawkinson might have had a great day statistically. We have to put the blame on him for not picking up some of the blitz. We have to put the blame on Hawkinson for not being able to protect Kirk Cousins as much as we were asking him to do. For that reason, 4 sacks in this game is allowed. Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison were running into brick walls all game long. Offensive line was horrendous. Outside of that, this Minnesota Vikings passing is the best I have seen in forever. I don't know the last time the Vikings passing game was this good. If Kirk Cousins just has a glimpse of time to go through his reads with a clean pocket, he might be the most accurate quarterback I've ever seen in Vikings uniform. Yes, and that includes Brett Favre when I'm looking at it right now. I can't believe the fact that this Minnesota Vikings offense is so good. And us Vikings fans, us Vikings team, I just want to say, we do not deserve Justin Jefferson. We do not deserve to have such a talented player on this team and lose to the Lions 2 straight years. Now, respect to the Lions, they're not a bad team. But at the end of the day, you were trailing in this whole game. The game didn't feel competitive at all into the 4th quarter. At some point in this game, Kirk Cousins was just hucking it to Justin Jefferson and it was working. Where was that? Where was that explosive offense the first half of this game? As the Minnesota Vikings came into this game trying to establish the run early. I didn't hate the decision. It didn't work. So stop trying to run the dang ball. Move the ball through the air. The Lions did a great job making yourself a one-dimensional offense. Fine. You see Kirk Cousins, if he sees Justin Jefferson one-on-one coverage against any corner, throw it to him. I don't care if I don't care if Justin Jefferson is covered completely from that corner. From what we've seen, he comes down with it. Now, into double coverage, triple coverage is a different story. For that reason, you have your next men up. And the Minnesota Vikings passing offense may be the best since Randy Moss and Chris Carter. And I'm being completely honest. And I'm not here comparing Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen to Randy Moss and Chris Carter, because like I've mentioned many times, I hate the comparison between Justin Jefferson and Randy Moss. The only similarity between the two receivers is that they're wide receivers wearing the Minnesota Vikings uniform. I mean, Randy Moss was a completely different player than Justin Jefferson is. For that reason, just want to say we are never going to compare Justin Jefferson to Randy Moss. We are going to have Jefferson make his own legacy because this man is unbelievable. Looking at it for the receiving stats for the Minnesota Vikings, Kirk Cousins had, in many people's opinion, his best day in purple and gold, his best day for the Minnesota Vikings. Now, while I may disagree just simply because based off of the eye test, still Kirk Cousins was an accurate quarterback, had a great day, 75.6 completion percentage, 425 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and a 124.5 passer rating. The reason why I don't say that this is Kirk's best day in purple and gold, even though statistically it might be, is just simply because a lot of the sacks that Kirk Cousins allows in this game, he is able to escape. Kirk Cousins does have legs. Kirk Cousins is a mobile quarterback. And I say that, and a lot of people say, oh, you're stupid for thinking Kirk Cousins is a mobile quarterback. He is. We have seen Kirk extend plays. Go watch how Kirk Cousins played in Washington. It's like the guy comes to Minnesota and forgets that he has legs. But he's not in a wheelchair. He can move. This is not Ben Roethlisberger we're talking about. This is not Phillip Rivers we're talking about. Kirk Cousins can move. We've seen it with the Minnesota Vikings, and I feel like if he was able to extend plays, move outside the pocket, maybe roll out, maybe run some more bootlegs. I don't care. Do something so you're not relying your offensive line to be the end-all, be-all for your Minnesota Vikings offense. Justin Jefferson, 15 targets, 11 receptions for 223 yards, breaking another record. Every week, Jefferson is here to break a record, breaking the record for the most receiving yards in a single game in franchise history. We've had Randy Moss, we've had Chris Carter, we've had Sammy White, we've had multiple Stephon Diggs, we've had multiple All-Pros and future Hall of Famers and current Hall of Famers on this Minnesota Vikings team, and Jefferson is just here to break the record for most receiving yards in a casual game against the Lions. I believe his second most receiving yards was against the Lions as well a few years ago, if I have that right. Maybe it changed since then because every week the dude is coming up with big-time numbers. If you look at the most receiving yards in a single game this season, Jefferson is 3 of the top 5. That's how insane he is. Adam Thielen, 32-year-old, wideout, easily such a stud. In my opinion, we have the best receiving core. I know people disagree, especially Miami Dolphins fans, but I believe Adam Thielen is the most reliable wide receiver 2 in this league. 8 targets, 7 receptions, 65 yards, and a touchdown. Adam T. Thielen has returned. TJ Hawkinson against his former team had a Minnesota Vikings career high in receiving yards, that being 77 on 6 receptions. You'll love to see it. This Minnesota Vikings passing offense is one of the best, if not the best, in this league. And I can say the same for the Minnesota Vikings offense as a whole. In my opinion, the Minnesota Vikings offense could be the best if you just fix simple mistakes. And we've seen it in this game. We saw it against the Cowboys. We saw it in multiple games. You have to add additional blockers to protect for Kirk Cousins. You can't rely on your offensive line to be the end-all, be-all. I love to see the I formation in this game. Obviously, I'm a huge CJ Ham fan. I understand why a lot of people might not be as big of a Ham fan as I am. But what he does do is he's good in pass protection and run blocking. For that reason, him giving more play time, I would love that. I would love to see Johnny Munt, anybody, just have people who can pick up the blitz so you don't see interior rushers coming into all game long. So you have to add additional blockers, Christian Darrisaw being back, and it also just Kirk Cousins has to realize he has legs. And for that reason, if this happens, and this is a big if, I believe we do have a top 3, top 5 offense in this league when done properly. You have to make Kirk Cousins, giving him time inside the pocket, giving him not even just time inside the pocket, giving him protection should be the number 1 priority for this Minnesota Vikings offense. And then after that, you have to realize that Justin Jefferson should be having games like this all the time where he's 15 targets. And he's the Vikings player of the game. Obviously, Justin Jefferson on 15 targets had 223 yards. Unbelievable game. Unbelievable from Justin Jefferson. Next week, the Minnesota Vikings will host the Indianapolis Colts this Saturday, 12 o'clock Central Time on ABC if you are in the Minnesota area. Great. Saturday football is back. Saturday NFL football, I should say, is back. Now that the college playoffs are coming up, you do have Saturday football for the Minnesota Vikings, where we will host the Indianapolis Colts. Bad loss, 10-3 is fine. I'm completely fine with 10-3. This is better than I thought we were going to be at this point in the season, but we've had 3 bad losses. The Cowboys, the Eagles, and the Lions all feel painful. Let me know what you think.